woke up this morning to a political earthquake that nobody saw coming. Keir Starmer just made an announcement so shocking, so completely unexpected, that it sent shockwaves through Westminster, divided the nation down the middle, and left even his own party members scrambling for answers. What was supposed to be a routine press conference turned into one of the most dramatic moments in modern British political history. The Prime Minister stood before the cameras, and what came out of his mouth has changed everything. Political analysts are calling it career suicide. His opponents are celebrating in the streets. His supporters are in complete disbelief. And the British public, they're absolutely stunned. This isn't just another political statement. This isn't just another policy announcement. This is something that will be talked about for decades to come. The timing couldn't be more suspicious. The implications couldn't be more severe. And what happens next could reshape the entire future of British politics as we know it. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will blow your mind, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this single announcement has the power to change everything. The morning started like any other Tuesday in Westminster. Politicians were preparing for another day of parliamentary business. Journalists were chasing their usual stories, and the British public was going about their daily routines, completely unaware that their political landscape was about to be turned completely upside down. But then, at exactly 10:30 in the morning, Downing Street released an urgent statement. The Prime Minister would be making an unscheduled live announcement at noon. No details, no warning, no explanation. Just a simple message that Keir Starmer would address the nation on a matter of critical importance. Immediately, speculation went into overdrive. What could possibly warrant such an urgent address? The press gallery erupted into chaos. Political correspondents started making frantic phone calls. Social media exploded with theories ranging from the plausible to the absolutely absurd. Some thought it might be about the economy. Others feared an international crisis. A few even wondered if it concerned national security. But nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, could have predicted what was actually coming. As the clock ticked closer to noon, tension built across the country. People stopped what they were doing. Workers gathered around television screens in office break rooms. Shoppers paused to watch on their phones. The entire nation held its breath, waiting to hear what their Prime Minister had to say. And then, right on schedule, Keir Starmer walked up to the podium. His expression was serious, determined, and completely unreadable. The room fell into absolute silence. Cameras clicked. Reporters leaned forward. And then he spoke. The words that came out of his mouth sent an immediate shockwave through everyone watching. Keir Starmer announced that he would be calling for a snap general election. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing. He didn't just announce an election. He announced that this election would take place in just 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Not the usual several months of campaigning, not the traditional lengthy lead-up that allows parties to prepare their strategies and manifestos. 6 weeks from now, the British people would be heading back to the polls to decide the future of their country. The reaction was instantaneous and explosive. Opposition benches erupted. Conservative MPs could barely contain their excitement. Liberal Democrats started scrambling. And Labour's own backbenchers, many of them looked absolutely shell-shocked, clearly blindsided by their own leader's decision. This wasn't something that had been discussed in party meetings. This wasn't a strategy that had been carefully planned and debated. This was Keir Starmer making a unilateral decision that has thrown British politics into complete turmoil. But why would he do this? What possible reason could the Prime Minister have for calling an election so suddenly with such little preparation time and at a moment when his own party seems completely unprepared for a national campaign? This is where things get really interesting, because the timing of this announcement is absolutely critical to understanding what's really going on here. Let's look at the context. Just 3 months ago, Labour was riding high in the polls. Keir Starmer's approval ratings were decent. The party seemed stable, unified and in control. But then everything started to change. A series of policy missteps began to erode public confidence. Internal party divisions started making headlines. Economic indicators started moving in the wrong direction. And most damaging of all, By speaking of all, several high-profile scandals began to emerge, threatening to derail the government's entire agenda. Suddenly, those comfortable poll numbers started to shrink. The Conservative opposition began gaining ground. Reform UK started making serious inroads with disaffected voters, and whispers began circulating through Westminster that Labour's position might not be as secure as everyone had assumed. Political insiders started talking about potential leadership challenges. Backbenchers began expressing concerns privately, and the media started running stories questioning whether Keir Starmer had truly consolidated his power within his own party. This is the environment in which today's announcement was made, and it changes everything about how we need to interpret what just happened. So here's the theory that's now dominating political discussion across Britain. Keir Starmer didn't call this snap election because he's confident of victory. He called it because he's running scared. Think about it logically. If you're a prime minister sitting comfortably with a strong majority, solid poll numbers and a united party behind you, why would you risk everything on a snap election? Why would you cut short your term and force your party into a rushed campaign when you could govern for several more years? The answer is simple. You wouldn't. Unless you knew something that the public doesn't. Unless you had information suggesting that waiting would only make things worse. Unless you believed that your position would be even weaker in 6 months, a year, or 2 years from now. That's the calculation that many political analysts believe Keir Starmer has made. He's looked at the trajectory of his government, assessed the mounting challenges ahead, and decided that his best chance, possibly his only chance, of maintaining power is to go to the country now before things get even worse. The strategic reasoning behind this decision becomes even clearer when you examine what's been happening behind closed doors in Westminster over the past few weeks. Sources close to the Labour leadership have been whispering about growing tensions within the cabinet. Multiple ministers have reportedly clashed with Starmer over policy direction, particularly regarding economic strategy and social programmes that form the core of Labour's original platform. These aren't minor disagreements over implementation details. These are fundamental conflicts about the very direction the party should be taking. Senior figures within Labour have been privately expressing concerns that the party is losing touch with its traditional working class base, while simultaneously failing to convince Middle England that it can be trusted with the economy. This is a nightmare scenario for any Prime Minister when your own team starts questioning your leadership and your electoral coalition begins fracturing. You're in serious trouble. The internal polling that Labour has been conducting apparently paints an even grimmer picture than the public polls suggest. While the published surveys show Labour's lead shrinking, the party's private research reportedly indicates that crucial swing constituencies are moving decisively away from the government. Focus groups have been delivering brutal feedback about Starmer's leadership style, his policy decisions, and his ability to connect with ordinary voters. The data suggests that the longer Starmer remains in office without a fresh electoral mandate, the more his support will continue to erode. This brings us to another critical factor driving today's shocking announcement. The Conservative Party has been experiencing something of a renaissance in recent months. After their devastating election defeat that brought Labour to power, many political observers wrote them off as a spent force that would need years to rebuild. But politics moves fast, and the Conservatives have been recovering far more quickly than anyone anticipated. They've united behind new leadership that's proven surprisingly effective at landing political blows against the government. They've refined their messaging to focus on issues where Labour appears vulnerable. And most importantly, they've started to look like a credible alternative government again. This rapid Conservative recovery has clearly spooked Labour strategists. Every week that passes sees the opposition gain more confidence, more momentum and more media attention. If current trends continue, within 6 months, the Conservatives could be level with Labour in the polls. Within a year, they could be ahead. Keir Starmer has obviously concluded that he cannot allow that to happen. By calling an election now, he's attempting to catch the Conservatives before they're fully prepared, before their recovery is complete, and before they've had time to develop a comprehensive campaign strategy that could genuinely threaten Labour's hold on power. But there's another elephant in the room that nobody can ignore, and it's causing absolute chaos across the British political landscape. Reform UK has been steadily building support, particularly among voters who feel abandoned by both Labour and the Conservatives. Their populist message has been resonating in communities that once formed Labour's electoral heartland. Recent by-elections have shown Reform making significant inroads, splitting the vote in ways that could prove catastrophic for both major parties in a general election. Some analysts believe that Reform could win a dozen or more parliamentary seats in a full general election, fundamentally altering the arithmetic of British politics. For Keir Starmer, this represents both a threat and an opportunity. The threat is obvious. Reform could split the centre, left and centre-right vote in ways that make it nearly impossible for Labour to maintain its majority. But the opportunity is equally significant if Starmer can force an election before Reform is fully organised, before they've selected candidates in every constituency, and before they've built the ground game necessary for a national campaign. He might be able to minimise the damage they can inflict. This calculation appears to be central to the timing of today's announcement. 6 weeks is barely enough time for the established parties to run effective campaigns. For a newer party like Reform, it's an almost impossible timeline. They'll struggle to field candidates everywhere. They'll lack the resources for comprehensive advertising campaigns, and they won't have time to build the volunteer networks that win elections at the grassroots level. The economic context surrounding this decision cannot be overlooked either. Britain's economy has been sending mixed signals for months. Growth has been sluggish. Inflation remains stubborn. Public services are struggling with funding constraints. And the promised improvements that Labour campaigned on have been slow to materialise. Economic forecasts for the coming year are not encouraging. Multiple independent analysts have warned of potential recession. Business confidence has been shaky and international economic headwinds are strengthening. If these predictions prove accurate, Keir Starmer would be facing an election campaign during an economic downturn, having to defend his government's record during a recession. That's a nightmare scenario for any incumbent. By calling an election now, while the economy is merely stagnant rather than actively contracting, Starmer is attempting to avoid that fate. He's gambling that voters will be more forgiving of slow progress than they would be of actual economic decline. It's a calculated risk, but given the alternatives, it might be his best available option. The Prime Minister clearly believes that his chances of winning now, while he can still claim the economy is stable and improving, are better than his chances of winning in a year when he might have to defend an actual recession. The international dimension of this decision adds yet another layer of complexity to an already explosive situation. Britain's relationship with the European Union has been evolving in ways that have created tensions both within the Labour Party and across the broader political spectrum. Starmer has been attempting to navigate a delicate balance between those who want closer alignment with Brussels and those who insist that Brexit must be respected in its entirety. Recent negotiations over trade agreements and regulatory frameworks have not gone smoothly. European leaders have been pushing for concessions that many British voters would find unacceptable. Meanwhile, hardline Brexit supporters have been accusing Starmer of betraying the referendum result through incremental steps toward regulatory alignment. This toxic combination of external pressure and internal division has created a political minefield that becomes more dangerous with each passing month. By calling an election now, Starmer is attempting to secure a fresh mandate before any major decisions on European relations must be made. He wants to face voters before he's forced to make choices that will inevitably anger significant portions of the electorate, regardless of which direction he chooses. The timing also relates to broader geopolitical developments that have been causing serious concern within government circles. The international security threats have been escalating, global economic instability has been increasing, and Britain's role in various international alliances has been under scrutiny. These challenges require strong leadership with a clear electoral mandate. Starmer apparently believes that securing that mandate now will strengthen his hand in dealing with international partners and adversaries alike. The reaction from opposition parties has been exactly what you would expect, but with some fascinating twists that reveal just how much this announcement has disrupted everyone's calculations. The Conservative Party initially responded with jubilation. Their spokespeople immediately declared they were ready for an election and confident of victory. Social media accounts belonging to Conservative MPs erupted with fighting talk and bold predictions, but within hours, a different tone began emerging from Conservative sources. Behind the scenes, party officials have been expressing serious concerns about their readiness for a campaign that starts immediately. Candidate selection in numerous constituencies remains incomplete. Campaign materials are not fully prepared. And the comprehensive policy platform they had been developing for an election expected next year is not ready for public release. The Conservatives now face a brutal reality. They have 6 weeks to select candidates, finalise policies, raise money, organise volunteers and run a nationwide campaign. That's an enormous challenge even for a well-resourced party with recent election experience. For a party that's been in opposition and rebuilding its infrastructure, it's bordering on impossible. Some Conservative strategists are privately admitting that Starmer's gamble might actually work precisely because it's caught them so completely off guard. The Liberal Democrats face similar challenges but with different dynamics. They've been quietly building strength in local government and targeting specific constituencies where they believe they can win. Their strategy has been based on a long campaign focused on local issues and community engagement. A 6-week sprint completely undermines that approach and forces them into a national campaign they're not prepared to fight effectively. Reform UK finds itself in perhaps the most difficult position of all the opposition parties. They've been building momentum and making bold claims about their ability to reshape British politics. But momentum and organisation are two very different things. Reform has strong support in certain areas and among certain demographics, but translating that support into parliamentary seats requires infrastructure they simply don't have. They need candidates in hundreds of constituencies. They need campaign offices and volunteer networks across the country. They need the money to fund advertising and staff, and they need all of it within 6 weeks. Multiple Reform candidates who are planning to stand have already announced they cannot organise campaigns in such a short time frame. Constituencies where Reform was planning to mount serious challenges will now have either no candidate or poorly resourced campaigns that cannot compete effectively. This is exactly what Starmer was counting on. By compressing the timeline, he's made it nearly impossible for Reform to capitalise on their growing support. Even if their poll numbers continue to rise, they won't have the organisational capacity to convert that support into seats. The smaller parties face complete marginalisation in this environment. The Greens, the Scottish National Party, Plaid Cymru and various regional parties all depend on sustained campaigns to build visibility and support. A 6-week election cycle means they'll be drowned out by the coverage of the three main parties. Their messages will be lost in the noise, their candidates will struggle for recognition, and their hopes of making gains will largely evaporate. The media response to Starmer's announcement has been fascinating to observe and reveals deep divisions about how this gamble should be interpreted. Some commentators are praising the Prime Minister for bold leadership and decisive action. They argue that calling an election when you believe it's the right time is exactly what strong leaders do. These supporters claim that Starmer is showing confidence in his record and his vision for Britain by taking his case directly to the people. They point out that if he truly believed his position would improve over time, he wouldn't be taking this risk. Therefore, they argue this must be a sign of strength rather than weakness. Other analysts are taking the completely opposite view. They're portraying this as an act of desperation by a Prime Minister who knows his time is running out. These critics argue that no genuinely confident leader would cut short their term and force an unnecessary election during a period when their government should be focusing on delivering results. They interpret the compressed timeline as evidence that Starmer is trying to sneak an election victory before voters have time to fully understand his failures.